bring them.
Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film. Thank you for joining us. This is our 34th year of bringing you films for, by, and about our community and its allies. This, however, is our first year of doing a hybrid event, meaning we have some films in theater, we have some films that are virtual, and some films that are both. We have a terrific lineup this year, and I cannot wait for everybody to watch those. So I'm very excited about our special guest today, one of the great documentaries that we're showing this year. And let me just say, everybody who knows me as a programmer knows that I love great documentaries. And you know, this film has been on our radar for a while, and I'm just so glad we're finally able to show it. The film is Maurice Hines, Bringing Them Back, and we have the director and producer, John Carluccio, and we have the writer and producer, Tracy Hopkins, with us today. And Miko Evans from Meek Productions is going to do a Q&A with them. So everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm gonna let you two go at it.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to our viewing audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back, okay, to the 34th annual Out on Film, Atlanta's largest LGBTQ film festival. And of course, my name is Miko Evans. I'm the CEO of Meek Productions. That's M-E-A-K as in kite, Productions with an S. We're the world's first LGBTQ exclusive talent agency and production company. And we are proud to have been a media partner with Out on Film for the past 9 years. Next year will be our 10-year anniversary, and I'm very excited about it. We're very excited about this year. As Jim just said, this is their first hybrid festival where some films are going to be shown in theaters, and the majority of the films are actually going to be on virtual. And so one of the films that we just got through talking about that has the pleasure of having both showings, both virtual and in person, and they are going to be here in person this weekend, this coming Sunday. Both Tracy Hopkins and John Carluccio, the writer, director, and producers of this fabulous documentary with the great legend Maurice Hines. The title is Maurice Hines, Bring Them Back. I'm excited to just have you all here virtually, and you know I'm gonna have a fit when I see y'all in person.
Well, thank you for having us. It's a real pleasure for us to be part of it.
And especially, John, when you told me that you've never been to the ATL, I mean, you know, we got to acclimate you in right now.
All right. All right. It's going to be a very special ATL experience, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. Let's really get right into it, because I am so excited about this movie. I'm glad that Maurice is finally getting his due, because a lot of people never really knew his story. And I was very excited to see the documentary, to actually hear his testimony, see his story. And I'm just so proud of him and how he was able to take a stand in his industry during a time when being Black, being gay was a struggle. You know what I'm saying? And he grew up in a time where, you know, that was not heard of. I also applaud and speak the names of his parents, you know, and how during that time of, you know, like the 40s and stuff like that, it wasn't heard of for, especially when you grow up in a family, you know, of color, where, you know, it's not heard of for family to be supportive of their gay son in that manner. So, I mean, I just love that whole testimony, and you all captured that so well. Congratulations on that, you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, I mean, it is an interesting moment. I did ask him like who he saw. Like he saw people in his neighborhood. He knew people who were out. But as far as on a mainstream level, especially African American, there were writers. You know, you have your Langston Hughes and James Baldwin's and stuff like that. But as far as entertainers that are maybe in movies and TV, very hush and very, very hard for him to like even see anyone. Even when I mentioned Johnny Mathis to him,
absolutely,
he worked alongside Johnny Mathis or like in same venues and stuff. He wasn't necessarily surprised, but he never knew that he would come out at a certain point. You know, so he only came out more recently, I guess. But yeah, so he didn't have those sort of role models. So he followed his truth. And it's just Maurice. How does he put it? I'm Maurice, as he said.
That's right. That's the part I love about the documentary. He said, "Child, please, ain't got time for no labels. I'm Maurice."
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us a little bit. Give our viewing audience a little bit about your background, each of you. Whichever one want to start.
Okay. So I'm Tracy Hopkins, the writer producer of the film, and My background is primarily in journalism, like entertainment, lifestyle journalism. So I've interviewed like a lot of performing artists. I was familiar with both Gregory and Maurice. A real fan of Gregory's work. Like my mom went to see Sophisticated Ladies and Jelly Flats
Mhm.
Jam on Broadway. And then being a journalist in New York, had seen Maurice's Hot Feet. So I was familiar with the brothers, and I'm a big fan of dance also. So John is my husband.
Mhm.
He was working on the production.
Yes, yes.
He was working on the production, and you know, things were shifting as far as like who he was working with. And he said, hey, I think you would be really good to work on this
Right.
with your background in dance, with your background in Broadway
And producing.
and producing as
Yeah.
a journalist. So this was a career shift for me to step into a documentary. And so, you know, it was a really great fit because of like my storytelling skill set, because of my
Right.
knowledge of the world of dance and Broadway. So that's my background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, she comes much more from a journalistic, background, and I come more from a film, obviously documentary, but I have more of an arts background in like visual arts and camera work and and even in editing. So in a weird way, it's kind of like she kind of kept it like factually on point, made sure that we had the story points, make sure it made sense. And here I kind of lean toward more expressive, sort of like the bright colors. And she's like, no, let's make sure this line is sharp. You know what I mean? So it kind of was a balance between, you know, dealing with telling a compelling story that makes sense, but also bringing out an emotional and putting us on an emotional journey, and me playing in some sort of abstraction without it being too abstract. So she kind of reeled it in. She brought me back in some way. You know what I mean? And vice versa. I would sort of push her a little, say, look, I want to make sure this has like, I want it to not just be a generic, you know, info kind of documentary. I want to make sure it's a film, a movie, not just a document, you know, so.
What was the inspiration behind you deciding to do a documentary on Maurice Hines? Because I know, Tracy, you said that you actually a fan of the dance and Broadway.
Right.
But what was really the defining, the final factor in saying, hey, we're going to do a documentary on him?
Right. well, it was sort of like a friend of his that was managing him, sort of temporarily managing, was like, someone's got to do a film about Maurice. And I met with him. I was like, let's do something. And he's like, sure, let's do it, whatever. He was just very like, he's had so many projects that have started and not finished, so many projects that are like, what do I got to lose kind of thing. So he sort of had like, in the film, he's described as having no middle. So at times he was like super available and then super guarded, you know? And so we got started. I said, let's do like a little sizzle reel thing. We shot it at the Apollo Theater. I have a good friend who runs the place, Camilla Forbes, and she said, come, you know, you can have the space for about an hour and a half. And that portion appears in the film. And so we shot that, and I was like, okay, I think we got a film here. We could start with that. And Maurice was like, great. But then he was also kind of push and pull, and it was challenging. Eventually he surrendered, and he loves the film, and he didn't actually want to see the film when we were done with it. He's very, very, very interesting man. But the thing for me was, I saw that there were a bunch of different storylines, but the brother's story was something that I completely understood, working alongside my brother and having a bit of a falling out with him, and understanding that dynamic. I felt like there's a universal story here. And like there's all these other elements that he carries with it, and those inform who he is and how he's lived his life. But the partnership with someone creatively at a young age, that stuff adds up. And what happens when you get older, and how you, in some ways, you never stop loving your sibling or your partner or your friend, whatever it is, but you might not always like them. And so I found that to be like, I've seen that in so many different worlds. I've experienced it. I've seen it with so many other people. So I was like, you know, maybe this is a chance to explore that topic. And that was what kept me really focused on it, because I knew these other things were important and people will get, you know, the small details about his life. But that general theme, and having all that footage of them playing each other, playing brothers in the Cotton Club, and footage of them working together, I was like, there's already enough stuff to illustrate their energy together that I was like, okay, I think that we can do a film with this.
You know what? The interesting thing about this beautiful manifestation of his life and his story is that it takes me back to when I was first introduced to, first of all, Gregory Hines.
Right.
And I remember my mom and I was talking a few weeks ago when I told her I was going to be doing the Q&A here. And we got to thinking about when we first heard about Greg, and then how at one point we didn't even know he had a brother.
Right.
Now, and I'm sure many of you all can relate to this. And it's like, wait a minute, he got a brother? And then come to find out he was 2 years older than him. And so, because I wasn't introduced to Maurice until I saw the Cotton Club. And I think during that time when the Cotton Club came out, I was already in my earlier years in high school.
Right.
And by that time, Greg was already, he was already high mainstream during that time.
Right.
And because like I said, my first introduction to the Hines brothers was film and TV, not Broadway or dance and everything like that. I had to kind of do back research once I saw them on film and stuff. And so it was just so amazing to know that they've been dancing since childhood, since 8 and 10 years old, which is something I never knew. And I think that's a great way, intro segment, to get people acclimated with the film that, they had all this history and not too many people knew about it.
Yeah. And I think it's not uncommon. Like I like the story of the other brother.
Yeah.
Like there's always another brother or another sister or another, there's always some, like, look, I don't know if it's a line, but like the Solange story, is not, there's always not that, and it's a different dynamic because they weren't partners together, but there's a balancing act. It's like, it's as if like, you never heard of Beyonce, you only heard of Solange or something. Yeah.
And it depends on how old you are too. So like, people who are older, like our one of our executive producers, Charles Randolph Wright, he's like, he grew up watching the Hines brothers, the Hines kids on TV. So, his generation is aware, but then people in like our generation, we knew Gregory and maybe we had seen Maurice, but not made the connection, like that's his brother, you know what I mean? So I don't know where you came in with their story, but the fact that their story spans like 70 years,
Right.
A lot of people have met them at different points.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's always another person. And I felt like I'm more drawn to the other brother. I've always like, because people know, I mean, there needs to be a Gregory Hines documentary, but I'm glad that like the big star of the brother that we are, the superstar. Like we can identify with looking up at someone else doing stuff, then we can say that we're the top of the mountain. And there's a lot of I like these stories. So I'm drawn to them.
There are so many points in this documentary where, y'all, it's like y'all was able to uncover a lot of stuff that the general public didn't know. So before I get into some of the pieces that I'm, interested in, kind of tell me, in doing this whole documentary, what was it that shocked you all most in uncovering? I know there's so many. We just touched on one, but what is one of the things for each of you that, wait a minute, I didn't know this. I knew this, but I didn't know this. Can y'all kind of talk about that a little bit?
Well, like I said, my introduction to Maurice kind of came from seeing him at Hot Feet and just like hearing his name around Broadway, but like meeting him and even getting into his story as he opened up more, he said he had a daughter and we're like, what? Okay. Like, how that, so learning that part of his story and, that was he describes it in the film as like being the best time of his life, being in California with his long-term partner, Silas Davis, and raising this daughter that they, adopted together, like raising her, and as Mr. Silas in the film, says, like audio says, like Maurice enjoyed being a mother, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that, that brought something to his life that was unexpected for him and learning about that was unexpected.
Gotcha. What about you, John?
I don't know. I mean, I get caught up in like the behind the scenes and like how things were made. I remember that like I was I said early on, like, we wanted to do this project, and he was like, sure, I love it, no problem. But then I'm like, you know, we should do an interview at your apartment. He's like, oh, no. I'm very private. I'm very private. And I used to say baby steps. We'll get there, baby steps. And then finally I do, but it was like the push and pull of his gardenness and that kind of, I mean, a lot of the shooting what happened was just me and him in his apartment. And the reason he's on his couch a lot was because he was at a point where he's like, I just want to sit here. I don't, you know, and it was those were the kind of surprises that I felt where, I mean, I want people to be themselves and meet them where they're at. And I found myself like, I had to push him at times, you know, because I was like, oh, wait a second, we got to talk about this. But at the same time, I allowed him to be himself. So that I guess I was surprised as how much I had to do this kind of wrestling thing with him. Mm-hmm. And I kept that in the film. You know, you could hear me off camera like, oh, come on, Maurice, or whatever it is, you know. But at the same time, he's just I call him a lovable agitator. Like, and I think we need those kind of people in our life. And I identify with it. And I was just like, I was drawn to that. So it was definitely a challenge. And I'm just glad that we could put it all together in a very cool, cohesive package, I guess. Yeah.
I love the way that you all put it, because it's like the way that you all sequenced everything from the beginning to the end, and you kind of brought in, you know, the modern moments, what's going on now, and then went back. But everything was like in a wonderful symphony. You know, I just want to just let you all know that, because I love the fact that even toward the end, because not a lot of people, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, we don't talk a lot about getting older in the LGBTQ community and what that entails. And I love the fact that you kind of showed that, even about Maurice, with everything he's accomplished, hey, he's still human. And with him being at his age, because I know right now he should be in his late 70s now, right?
Yes, 70.
He's 77 now.
77 or 77, 78. I knew it was one of those numbers. Yeah. And the fact that he's still going on strong, and I love the fact that he's passing his knowledge on to the next generation, which is kind of still giving him his little life.
Right. Right. And I thought too, also what I felt really privileged to be, and sometimes it's just being in that room like that. There's a scene at the end, there's a party kind of thing going on, and being in the room around these people and just that energy, I think that's a very valuable thing for audiences to experience, you know. And he, even for you, and a lot of that's one of the main, no matter how much you think things are gone, there's still a lot of people out there for you. And it's loved as a star. He is loved personally. People really do connect with him and love and adore him, you know. So I want to make sure people felt that love.
Absolutely. And I also love the fact that you know, even after he was able to you know, mend fences with his brother, just a few short years before his brother passed. I love the fact that he has a real strong connection with his brother's children, with his nephews, and everything. I love seeing that connection and how they was actually involved in the audio restoration of the Cotton Club and stuff like that. So that was beautiful. Just seeing that was beautiful. I also want to talk about how in this documentary, I end up seeing faces that I haven't seen in years.
I like that.
And I'm talking about one in particular, which is Maurice's best friend. And I was wondering what happened to him when I didn't see him in film anymore, because of course I was introduced to him in film. One film in particular being Total Recall.
Right.
And I'm like, when I saw Mel Johnson Jr. and I saw how y'all kind of touched a little bit in his history and how him and Maurice met, I said, now I did hear that you always hear when you get into actor stories that a lot of them started in the theater. And normally when you don't hear from them anymore, they went back to their first love, which is the theater. So I had no idea he started in the theater. And just to even, and not even know that he was even part of the community, the LGBTQ plus community. I'm like, huh?
I know.
I was like, male family? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was just so awesome, and realize that they have been friends for what, 30 years, close to
What is
40.
that? 40 years. 40
Yeah,
plus.
close to 40 years.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
How
They
was
said-
how was you all able to kind of bring that dynamic together?
Well, Mel and Maurice are best friends. So like, you know, Maurice had a short list of people. He's like, you know, you have to interview this person. Like there were so many more people we could have interviewed, but like people who were really close to him. He's like, you know, Mel has to be a part of it.
Charles.
Charles Randolph Wright like was kind of his mentee. So when he heard we were doing it, he's like, oh, I have to be a part of it.
Right.
Jeffrey Thompson is another actor who was with Maurice and UB. So like they were just all like, once they knew what was going on, they were, you know, just naturally a part of his life and just.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I wanted to try. I don't really like talking head documentaries too much, so I tried to create situations where, if I could put Maurice with his friends in some sort of, or his family in some room and have a conversation, I could accomplish some of the talking head stuff. But it's more, and also since a lot of times I'm shooting too, it became a thing where I can move around and they're having a conversation and it's more me creating a verite kind of observational thing where, and then every once in a while I would say, hey, what about this topic or this topic? So I tried to create those situations, and I knew that Mel I called him up. He was very cool with like, yeah, let's do it. And then I actually shot the interview, I think after with him, just a solo shot. Yeah, he's got a lot of great friends that are there for him because he's been there for them. He's put them in their shows. I think Mel actually did something with Hot Feet. Remember, he's got a credit on there too. So he, you know, these guys are, you know, this Broadway community is pretty tight knit. There's a lot of people there working steadily. He, as described as the chorus, you know, a lot of times, and Maurice really respects them. And Mel is just a perfect example of someone that's like just always grinding. And you know, he showed up on some show recently. He was on some Marvel thing, I think a Daredevil spin-off thing on Netflix. He was in there. He had a reoccurring role in that. Yeah,
okay, yeah.
He's still working.
He's still working. He's still working, and he's got the voice of God, man. He's like,
Okay.
yeah. He used to do voiceover. He said so. When he leaves a message, it's one of the best messages. You know those types. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, hello, Mel. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, like I said, I have so much that I would love to say about this film because I mean, it is just so beautiful. It's so revealing. It's so inspiring. You know, I also love the fact that he was actually able to find two brothers that's like him and Greg and wait a minute.
Manzaris.
The Manzari brothers. I thank you.
I
didn't want to mess up the name.
Yeah, it's good. I'll take the Italian names. Yeah.
Yeah. How did they meet up? How did Maurice meet the Mazzari brothers?
I think so he met them when they were like
DC
teenagers.
So Maurice did a number of shows with Arena Stage in DC, and Charles Randolph Wright was the director, and I think it was Sophisticated Ladies. And from what I heard was he was doing stuff at the Ellington School, doing these workshops, and a lot of these workshops are the same kind of boot step thing that he's doing in the movie. Like how he always go. That's like the biggest challenge for these dancers. So I actually I saw a clip of this thing, and the Manzaris are young in this clip, and he's like, you guys are great, and you guys are brothers, and it ended up being a thing. He's like, maybe we can add them to the show, Charles. And Charles is like, okay, I guess we can try to do it, but and Maurice put his foot down, said we're doing it, and then before you know it, he was just they were part of like his future shows. Like I think he did another thing. He did Tapping Through Life with them as well. And then every once in a while they do this, you know, Tapping Through Life, kind of a smaller version of that they toured on. Yeah.
It was beautiful to see that captured, you know, and I was like so excited. I'm like, oh my God, we got the next Hines brothers, you know, and that was just so beautiful and everything like that. How was you all able to actually access the archive footage for you know, Maurice and Greg during their young years?
Well, some of it was through Maurice directly at the time. Like I was like, and he gave me a Super 8 film and a 16mm film. And I was like, this is gold. This is great. And then then after the film was finished, Maurice was doing some moving and packing up and stuff. And we found out that there was this whole other box of stuff. And that boxes of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I had that transferred. And so the version that premiered in 2019 at the Doc NYC and a couple other festivals, the version we recently, only as of August, updated it with these new archives that you've seen. So there's like the stuff of Hines and Dad on the Road, that's all brand new.
Wow.
Maurice talking about what's the show, the first show? Uptown It's Hot, talking about Uptown It's Hot and talking about being a choreographer, actor, sing, whatever, like people will, like that is new too. So there's a lot of, like, we got to add a lot more richness to the film with some of this archive and even tighten it up a little because he filled in some gaps that we didn't have clarity on. So it ends up being a little, actually like a minute or so shorter than the old one, but with more archives and some really great, and some really great stuff of him like singing, what was it? Baby, I'm a Star, you know, like with his dancers. Yeah, like
yes.
So like in a weird way, there's some stuff, it's a little coded maybe, but you see him with these dancers and you see these moves and you're like, oh, okay, I wonder what audiences thought a little of him, you know? Yeah. But anyway, I was like glad we could add that. I will say one thing. It was very important for me early on in the film to identify him, for him to identify himself as gay in a way, and that's it. And kind of get it out of the way. I mean, it's not a film about him being gay, but I didn't want it to be something where people's like their gaydar is up and they're like, I wonder when he's gonna come out. There's a lot of films where it's like, oh, about a half hour, it's revealed. I'm like, no, let's get that out of the way. And let's experience him for who he is. And then you also may be experiencing it from Gregory's point of view, or other people like, wow, he's really accomplished this. And you compartmentalize that and you get that stuff out of the way. So that was kind of like one of the story points that we wanted to try to get the audience to understand right off the bat without it being like surprise, you know, which I see in a lot of other films, which I'm not always taken into.
Because like we said before, like Maurice, the way he thinks of it is like, I'm just Maurice. I'm Maurice who just happens to be gay, right? But there are people in his den, he calls his group of friends his den, who didn't have that same experience. Yeah. So they actually were able to feel more liberated in themselves because of how free and accepting he was of himself.
Absolutely.
You know, and they did not have the same, like you said, family experience where their parents accepted them.
And the bubble, he also had the bubble of Broadway. I wouldn't say, maybe not, like he wasn't a TV actor, but a lot of entertainers do have a sort of bubble that they could, and Broadway, you know, is a lot more open to it. But still,
but even like some of those same friends that were on Broadway, they didn't have the same family support.
Right.
And
foundation.
They were able to, you know, feel like, hey, it's okay to be who I am. It's okay to just be bold and, you know.
Right. So. Right. And it's one facet.
And I think that was that particular component, and Maurice coming from a family that actually supported him, where he could be his complete authentic self. I believe it was also that gave him that strength and that power that he needed to be not only all of him in his art, but even when he needed to stand up for certain issues that related to people of color and that related to LGBTQ people. And so I love how you all captured all of that, because the fact that y'all showed certain clips to where they was nominated, both him and Greg was nominated for all of these Tonys and never won until Greg won his one?
Yeah, one. So
out of all them years of being nominated, he won one. Yeah.
I love that was one of the earliest things I edited. Like I was like, because I had the archives and I was testing stuff out. And it was just one of those things where it was like, I'm not sending any message. The message is in there. Like there's no, like, I didn't, like all these clueless white men going, what, me? Like that's in the footage, man. I was just like this. And the pacing of that just seemed to like say, okay, that's history right there. I'm not making this. The statement is in the archive.
It's in the archives, in the footage. You can't lie.
They're alive. It's not manufactured. That's what I'm saying. It's not really, yeah, it's not manufactured. So.
And I also like the fact that and I commend Maurice for this too, because even in him talking, he talked about the times, not just how things were in the business, in the entertainment business during the times of the 60s and 70s. He also talked about how certain morals and stuff, things that he was brought up on. And I'm basically talking about the dynamics between him and his brother. And of course, when his brother, when they kind of fell out, because a lot of people didn't know that they wasn't speaking for 10 years. You know, I knew that there was brief moments about them not talking, but I didn't know it was that long. And so, but I love the fact about how he talked about how when his family grew up, what was personal was personal. Entertainment is entertainment, but what was personal was personal. You can tell all your family business out there. And when he said that I resonated with that because that's how I was raised. Yeah. My mama didn't play that.
I mean, doesn't it speak to kind of like, I thought about how maybe it fits into kind of today's context with kids and social media.
Yeah,
like,
that part.
Like I was wondering about how like younger people receive this film and be like, they're surprised, like, how come, you know, like, how can you keep a secret like that? And yeah, it's very interesting to see how different generations have received this film. And it's like, I feel like the first act or the first 30 minutes is like, if you're a 20-year-old or in your 20, 30, you get it, right? You understand it, you might see yourself. The middle act is kind of like your middle age area. And then I think in the final act, you've been around people in their 60s and plus and understand what that feels like, or you're in that age. And so sometimes I get the sense that like different generations receive it differently. It depends on who you've been around and who you know, and how much you've lived,
And I also love the dynamic where you all showed when they finally was able to be on film together in that major production of the Cotton Club, how the exact characters that they played, they mimic each other really in real life. That's really the biggest, revelation that I saw, that, wow, that was really, really, really eerie. You know what I'm saying? It was so close together and stuff and everything. And also what I loved is the fact that they talked about how when they actually got the role, Francis just let them improvise.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Not really a script, you know what I'm saying? So that was wonderful. And everything. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, that was part of it. Like that, the archives just screamed at me like, yo, this, like, because what happens in documentary a lot of times, people have a great idea. Sometimes the person's not even alive and they need to illustrate it some way. They need to show, you can't just tell, right? So I don't need a talking head saying this happened, this happened, this happened. I saw this footage. I saw the Sesame Street clips. I saw, there was another thing that was really, I think the young footage later, but there was something else that I was just like, oh my God, this is just keeps getting better and better. And I was like, oh, okay, I can illustrate his story through these archives. He's gonna amplify it. So, but I at least had the visuals and sort of the B-roll of what was going on, or even whether it was a little surreal or kind of like reenactment, it still had the same, match the energy of what was going on in real life. And so I was like, okay, because a lot of times you can have great stories, but there's no documentation of it. You know, how many people do you know that have incredible lives? And there's only two, what is it, the famous thing, there's only two photographs of Robert Johnson, the famous blues guitar, right? It's like, this, and he's like the well-known guitarist that all the guitarists look up to. And it's like, okay, I find that to be inspiring. Like, that's why I pick up a camera, is to make sure we capture these things.
Wow, this is so beautiful. I want to make one final point before we actually end the conversation, is that I first of all, I want to appreciate you all, send much love to you all and say thank you, because we need more allies in our community like you two. And that give us the opportunity to tell our testimonies, to tell our stories. And I just love the fact that when I see Maurice, how much of an inspiration he's going to be to the next generation, not just to those in dance, but also to members of the LGBTQ plus community. Because when I think about everything that Maurice went through,
Yeah.
you know, it kind of makes me appreciate the Little Nas X's of the world.
Yeah.
And everybody else, because Little Nas X is able to be out and unapologetically who he is because of what Maurice did and many people before him. So I just want to thank you all for taking on this project. You know, give Maurice my love. Tell him thank you.
Oh, we will.
You know,
Yeah.
what is it about this film that you hope people take away? You know, in your own words.
I think you touched on it. Like, I'm glad we were able to give Maurice his flowers while he's still here.
Absolutely.
Like recognition, his moment in the spotlight. That people, can find inspiration from his story, and be bold and be courageous and be creative, be vocal, be themselves. That people will draw that personal inspiration from him. And we appreciate that you thank him. Like, other people in the film think he's very hard. He doesn't take compliments easily. Like like Charles told him in the scene, like, you do everything else, deflect. Oh, Gregory did this. And he's like, no, what you did. So it means a lot to us that people appreciate him and are able to, to thank him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he can receive it, and or that it's documented, and it's challenging to get this done. And a lot of times people would put off making a film, but it was like, it kind of like all kind of exploded at once where I had to shoot. There was all sorts of things happening in his life that I couldn't wait for financing and all that. I was like, we have to get this now. And I'm glad that people can get to see him in real time, in real life. And I think that people are not just one thing is really important. I think if people understand that, like, behind the scenes, there's a show business survivor, but it's not just he's surviving. And I appreciate that people can see that, because we tend to tell stories about people who are in past tense. And I'm like, it's important to celebrate our elders while they're here.
Absolutely.
Said, the flower, giving them flowers. So I'm appreciative. And also I'm very honored to be part of festivals like this, that you've included us and that you can include this film. It means a lot to us. And I think to Maurice too, who, he's kind of like a little unknown to a lot of people. And it's great that the community is supporting him. Yeah.
And I also want to talk about this final point too, because I think a lot of people think that when it comes to the dynamics of brothers or any relatives in entertainment, that it's just in a certain arena. And what I love about what you all did is that you brought about that dynamic, that it goes across the board. Because when I saw the dynamics between Maurice and Greg, it reminded me of the Jacksons. You know what I'm saying? With Michael Jackson and the Jacksons and Jackson 5, and that whole dynamic when Michael became, was the star, and people was really pushing him more out there. And so you can tell that was a dynamic between that. And so it was good to see that even with those two who would come from Broadway, and how y'all actually told the truth about that, and people needed to see the truth about that so that other young family stars who are coming up could know, and also be better prepared on how to handle certain pressures like that. So that was beautiful in how you all brought that forward.
Well, thank you. And in fact, the whole thing with the Manzari brothers was like, I'm sitting there and Maurice is asking them the questions, and they're like, we get along when we love each other when we're not fighting, or something like that. And currently the two of them are pretty much solo artists. They don't really work together. Only when they're with Maurice do they work together. And at points, they weren't necessarily always on good speaking. I mean, they were on speaking terms, but they were tense, right? And but now they're much cooler. And then Leo's put out a solo album, and John supported and backup dancer with him. It's like all sorts of stuff. But I think that they might have seen a direction that could have happened, a riff that could have spent, and it wasn't just 10 years. In reality, it was probably closer to 15 years that Gregory and Maurice didn't speak. Maurice, rose-colored glasses. He literally has rose-colored glasses. Like, he will sort of like downplay the sadness, But I think those guys learned something there in knowing that, hey, wait, let's be careful, because at the end of the day, we don't want it to go too far. We want to make sure that we don't present an image that could sort of separate us together. We don't want to, I think they learned something from that. So, and I'm hoping whether you're a dancer or just, your two guys that are brothers that have a plumbing business that you that you might be like, why is his name on the truck and not mine, or whatever it is. I don't know. Like, I think the power dynamics of young siblings, you know, as it gets older and other things enter the picture, how do you navigate that? And so this is just one example of it. And I hope that resonates with people. Yeah.
How can people continue to support the film as we bring everything to a close? How can people continue to support the film even after the festival is over?
Oh, okay. So definitely come check us out at the film festival coming up soon, this weekend.
Or now. Yeah.
Oh, now.
Right now, or wherever we are in time.
Right,
you know,
right.
Past, present, future. You know, we're all over the place.
And then they can go to our website, MauriceHinesMovie.com, for updates on like future screenings and like an upcoming announcement about
Broadcast
premiere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because I wanted to find out, are you all preparing to try to present this either on Netflix or any of the other outlets?
We'll make the announcement soon, but we do have a deal in place that would yes. And so February 2022, it will be available, but we haven't made the formal announcement, but it's signed, sealed, delivered. we just want to make sure we get everything lined up as far as marketing. But yes, it will be available, US streaming broadcast and TV network, cable TV network in February 2022. For Black History Month, yes.
Black History Month. Yes, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
I am excited. Thank you all, Tracy and John. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I cannot wait to see you all in person.
All right.
For those people that's viewing us right now, once again, you know, don't forget to continue to support Atlanta's largest LGBTQ film festival, Out on Film. Visit their website at www.outonfilm.org. And for more information about our agency and production company, please visit MEAK as in kite productions with an S.com. It's that same way on all forms of social media. Until next time, hope to see you at the theaters. And if you can't make it, continue to support what's going on virtually, okay? Love you all. Tracy, John, let's do this.
Okay.
This
Right.
weekend.
Thank you.
This weekend.
All right.
Jim.